Peaks. The there's a guy. I think his name is Harry Truman actually. Which Twin Peaks is full of very interesting sort of psychological stuff. So I'm sure Harry Truman, true man, but then also of course the president having been named Truman, so that kind of undercuts it. Then of course the Truman Show. By the way, if anyone can give me a comment, if I'm in the Truman Show, by the way, please tell me. I'm not totally certain that I am, but sometimes it feels like I am. Maybe the Truman Show is just kind of your conception of the way things are, though, and how people are going to respond to you. And then they kind of respond to you probably according to that because you're acting in a certain way. And then it feels like you're on the Truman Show, but actually you're not. Or that might be a good metaphor. But here's the thing: I've had way too many people seem like way too fucking knowledgeable about me. Like if you see me walking down the street and like you know a lot about me, like really? How? I think I might be in the Truman Show or something because from my vantage point, it doesn't seem like this many random fucking people would like recognize me. Could be. A lot of people don't like me in Rhode Island. A lot of a lot of people don't like me in Rhode Island. But still, and it's like, well, Matt, it's just a state thing. Is it something to do with the state? Maybe I don't know. I think there is sort of like a weird attitude here. I think I sort of rub against the culture. Actually, it really pisses me off. Like they have cars parked here. Almost every street you go down, you're gonna see a car parked the wrong way on at least one of the fucking sides of the street. I think I've literally gone down a street where each car was parked the wrong way, so it was as if like we were in Britain now. And it's like, well, Matt, don't you dislike the government? Like, isn't that a big thing of yours? It's like it is a big thing of mine. I dislike mind control, which government is, right? I dislike the evils of the monopoly on force, and then all the fucking just fucking. I don't like to use the word lazy because lazy implies that there's something you have to do, and I think we're going to return to that point here because I left a Jim Newman observation unfinished or whatever. However, it would seem to me that if you're going to have rules and then you're just going to not follow them at all, that's even worse than having rules because then it's like, well, there's still a guy with a gun and a badge going around trying to enforce those rules, but it's kind of like, well, he's not really enforcing them, or like he will enforce them, but then it's really up to him. And then pretty soon the fucking the blinders come off and you realize it's literally just as it's always been, a bunch of people telling you what to do and fucking with you when they would like to. I got to tell you, there was a certain person in my legal experience who got a lot of fucking leeway and seemingly a lot of help from the state along the process. And it's like, well, Matt, was that the victim? Well, it is the person who received the emails. But even my lawyer said something along the lines of like, well, this guy's fairly fucking connected. Like, and I had a public defender. It wasn't and he was really good too. He was a pro bono guy, so he wasn't a public defender. He was actually pro bono because I was lied about in the first jail by some illegal immigrants, actually, as far as I know. And then a non-illegal non-immigrant saved me. And then the FBI seemed to not produce the letter that he sent them for months, actually, and didn't tell anybody about it. And then it's like, oh yeah, we got this letter saying that this whole extra investigation we did that got Matt sent to another jail because of these things people said about him. The letter says that those people are probably lying about him, so we're putting it forth now. And I think the idea was like he had sent it to them, but then it went into the wrong like file or something. It's like, dude, really? Okay. And my lawyer had already like that specific guy. I think he had already pointed out like, well, this guy doesn't seem like quite as strongly worded in his FBI interview as the other two guys were. It's like, yeah, why do you think? But it's not because you like me. In fact, one of the most haunting moments of me being in jail was my good friend there having a major fucking stroke, seemingly, and I've seen it happen to at least one other person. The aftermath, but he had a major effing stroke, and then the last thing he told me before they wheeled him out, and I never saw him again. I don't know if he ever went back there, but I hope he's still alive. He's probably in a federal prison right now for fucking looking at shit online. Yeah, that's another thing that's kind of bullshit that the government will send you to jail for. I'm not saying the stuff people look at is good, but I am saying that if it's there online and the government hasn't removed it, then doesn't it seem like the idea of having a big hole in your front lawn, and then if somebody falls into it, they get to sue you, except it's a big hole in the internet, but then when somebody falls into it, you arrest them? Isn't that kind of what it is here? I say I do this kind of thing somewhat facetiously because that is what it is. Very, very clearly. They, if their land is the internet and they decide what you get to do on the internet or not, then why do they get to keep traps on the internet? And then they could supposedly remove it from the internet if they wanted to, but instead they just keep it up there as maybe some kind of honeypot. It's like, well, Matt, what about torrents and stuff? It's like, well, perhaps there are torrents, but how do people have access to them? Like, it's accessible from somewhere. And it seems to me that if somebody's making a bunch of horrific shit and then putting it online, the real criminal, in your words, I would say to someone who might like associate with the state, in your words, the real criminal would be the person who made the shit, and the people just looking at it, they actually didn't even interact with the person that was in it. So, but in any case, I'm not saying certain things are good to look at, and in fact, I'd tell you, I'd highly warn you that there are big penalties for looking at stuff that may still be left up there by the people who then give you the penalties, or at least may not have been taken down yet. All right, hold on. I'm not totally sure how it works. I'm not totally. Luckily, I haven't been down that road, and because that would be probably that would have been horrific. I've seen a lot of. I saw a lot of decent. Well, maybe not a lot. I saw a lot of horrible people in jail, but I saw some decent people. Some actually very sort of strong people in jail who were in jail for looking at stuff online, and that's it. They never saw a victim in their life, at least not other than visually, right? But they never saw a victim. They never interacted with the victim. If you put them in a lineup of two, I think literally the probability would say that the victim would only get it right half the time which one they were, because the victim never saw them, because the victim was victimized by somebody else. Anyway, this guy, one of the last thing I think the last thing he told me before he was wheeled out of there with a massive stroke, seemingly, you can go check it. Well, I'm not going to tell you his name, but you could go check it out if I had, and then you had some records or something. But last thing he told me was X person was the one who was calling you crazy. Like, he told everyone in the unit that you were crazy or something. And it was a very interesting thing to say, but it was sort of like a final present or a final gift that he gave to me before I was sent to another jail, before he came back maybe to there. Uh, Basically saying, yeah, this guy wasn't your fucking friend. And yet that is the same guy who actually stuck his neck out and probably risked his life. Because he could have gotten some snitches mad, but they're snitches, so they're likely to be attracting the ire of the people that they go see anywhere other than the PC unit, and in the PC unit as well, actually. But yeah, they're likely to be attracting many people's ire. So I guess people probably wouldn't go out on a limb to help snitches. In fact, I guess if you're going to be falsely accused about something, probably better in the PC unit, because if there's somebody who they try to rope in, he might say, well, you know what? It's not that big of a risk for me because these guys have no fucking political capital in jail. I'd rather say the right thing rather than somebody finding out that I was lying too. Especially because maybe he didn't like so totally hate me, but clearly he disliked me enough to apparently tell people I was crazy, right? And it's like, well, you're not the first person, dude, but I thank you for basically risking your life for me, nevertheless. Okay, so anyway, what am I talking about here? Well, in any case, I'd like to go back to it. So, lied about me. Oh, lawyer, fuck. You know what? Wait a second. Did I was I making a particular point there? That was that that was probably a tangent related to something else. Uh Oh, well, in any case, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, in any case, there were some decent people there. I'll give you another quick anecdote. There was a great great moment in my life, one of the best moments of friendship I ever had. And basically, these guys had put this book. They kept putting this book under my pillow, and it was a book that I was known in the unit as somebody who's very against the killing of babies. And so, they, of course, there was a pro-choice book that appeared in the unit, and the literal title was pro-choice. And they kept fucking putting it like in my bed, like under my pillow and stuff. So, I'd go back there and there it would be. And so a couple of the people there, well, one of them took it and I think he gave it to the other guy. And then what the other guy did was he kept it and then he tore out a page like every once in a while, or some pages, and he would just flush them down the toilet. And you know what? That book didn't end up fucking back under my pillow. And that was a very nice thing to do. It's like, well, Matt, yeah, he destroyed that book, though. It's like, yeah, but that book had been being used as a tool to hurt me. So he was destroying essentially a weapon at that point. Because clearly the person to whom it belonged, they wanted to give it to me, right? Clearly they didn't quite care about having it there themselves, not that much. They wanted to give it to me, right? Clearly they didn't quite care about having it there themselves, not that much. They clearly, because they put it somewhere else, and you put something down, you may not see it again, especially in that kind of area. Anyway, I won't say who did that because it's still like probably kind of breaking the rules. I bet that's something that if the guards had heard about it, they'd probably be like, well, we really should do something, but whatever. Like, I bet you they'd just say whatever. Some of them might have even said or thought in their heart of hearts, like, well, all right, they were fucking with him, and then a couple of guys like helped him out and destroyed a book. Like, well, it wasn't our book to begin with. Somebody fucking ordered it. So if they kept giving the book to him, then they were kind of what, possession is 9/10 of the law. They were kind of literally almost like giving it to him as a present. So then I guess he could do what he would with it, right? Or my friends could, because I actually didn't do that, but they did it for me, or one guy did it, and it's like, well, Matt, why did you associate the other guy with it? I don't know. But I think the other guy may have been the one who took it and then he gave it to the other. In any case, they were a couple of really solid guys. Guess what? They were also there for not. This wasn't what I was there for, but like the other guy there, they were there for looking at something on the internet. I was there for sending emails on the internet. So anyway, what Jim Newman said is, he said something like, basically he was doing his usual thing where he's talking about like, hey, whatever spiritual practices you do, whatever you try to do, like that's all actually kind of, I don't know if he'd say worthless, but he seems to emphasize that like you're not gonna wake up doing that, like, or rather like those. It's sort of like Eckhart Tolle, where he says like, well, you could say that essentially you don't really like, until you are awake, you wouldn't necessarily have like the ability to help yourself wake up or something. So but then he said like, I think he said the word paradox in this scenario, but he's like, okay, well, he's like, maybe he said this or somebody else said like, well, then why are you teaching? Or maybe he said, well, then why am I even talking up here? And he's like, well, because basically like it wouldn't be helpful not to, or something. I don't know. In any case, take from that what you will. That's sort of vague. It might be somewhere in The Power of Now. He says something like that, or in A New Earth, or it might have been a video or something else. In any case, Jim Newman, he's talking about, awakening. He's talking about sort of like non-dual, whatever. He'd probably say like putting certain words to it might be more misleading, but putting any words to it is, ultimately just another label anyway. But Jim Newman, he said something along the lines of, he's like, well, aside from like somebody who basically aside from letting go of everything somehow, like you're not gonna be able to do it. And I think he said, or something like that, but I think he was saying something like, and I don't know how someone would be able to like let go of everything. Essentially, like, I don't know, I think how someone could be able to let go of the final thing, because the person like thinking that you're going to let go of the final thing is the final thing. Like sort of like the fact that you think there's something to let go of, or it seems that way, that kind of suggests that you are in the trap. And so the identity would not let go of itself, because the identity is, on some level, I think I don't know if he'd say it's because it's looking to maintain itself, or he'd say it's just in being an identity, it wouldn't be letting go of itself, right? So, but he said, here's the thing, he said like something like, well, he essentially he's like, and he's like, other than letting go of absolutely everything, or like other than somehow letting go of everything, you're not going to be able to do it. Well, here's what I have. LGOE, let go of everything. And you know what? Whether or not it seems to have gotten me to some final realization, and I did have a moment actually walking down the street over there where I realized, and I wrote it down, I realized you is a collection of thoughts. Not you are, you is, because you would constitute the thoughts, or the thoughts would constitute you. You would comprise the thoughts and not compose. The thoughts would compose the you in this case, but you is a collection of thoughts, not you are, again, because you, like you are some, you are not a collection of thoughts, but you is a collection of thoughts. Like the idea that that there's something I have to do. The idea that there's all this horrible stuff that's happening, or it's gonna happen, or it did happen. Like those are all. I'm not saying that stuff didn't happen, but what I am saying is, if you're thinking about stuff that supposedly thoughts are coming by and it's supposedly from the past, or like thoughts are coming by and it's like, oh, I got to do this, or thoughts are coming by and it's like, oh, maybe someday I'll let go of the last thing. It's like that. Those are all thoughts. The entire idea of you is just a collection of thoughts. Not that you're necessarily going to disappear. Jim Newman is still sitting there, but I was walking and like it was sort of powerful. I was like, oh shit. And I wrote it down. You is just a collection of thoughts. Uh, it's like, yeah, that's what it is, and it is. And I do have an English degree actually. Oh, do I have my Emerson College fucking thing in here? Or do I have a fucking book I edited? In any case, a book I edited for a real publishing company. By the way, I don't know. I do have my Ricardo hat. Maybe I'll fucking wear that. You know what? I think it's time to bring back the Ricardo hat. I was feeling a little reticent about it, kind of because I didn't want to put Ricardo on blast, because I feel like Ricardo's like one step away from feeling like he might be a caricature. I don't want to say that he is. I'm just saying like I could see how easy it would be for him to feel like, oh shit, like I'm a character. That's to say, not if he's like some kind of agent or something. But hold on. Yeah. Mm, yeah. So I don't know if I'm gonna wear this hat every time. I almost certainly am not gonna wear this hat every time, like at all. Not because I don't like the hat. I wear this hat actually most days. I wear this hat now that m- in any case, most days I wear this hat for a long time actually, but and it's getting kind of dirty, and it's like, well, that makes sense. So I think somebody left a comment on me posting a picture of it, or somebody posting Synthetic Man Stream Archive maybe posting a picture of it, and I think somebody said like, oh, it must smell like crusty socks and stuff, and it's like, well, yeah, you know what, if it's a Ricardo hat, I am the real Ricardo, not me, but that's a Ricardo quote, I am the real Ricardo. If it is a Ricardo hat, then wouldn't it make sense that it's dirty? It's similar like a Tim and Eric thing, right? But in any case, here we go. So what am I saying? So yeah, Jim Newman, he kind of lays it out like, but he laid it out in a way where it seemed like he was like, well, this wouldn't happen. But here I am, and I'm saying, Jim Newman, I've already had the "you is just a collection of thoughts" thing, and then it feels like I sort of got sucked back in. But I really like, I was walking down the street and I was like, oh my god, like ooh, it feels like everything's just kind of like a bunch of marbles, like floating marbles of like ether floating away. And this was a big part of getting there. That was like months ago. That same night, actually, I was listening to I was listening to the Dragon Force CD, Warp Speed Warriors, or part of it, on a walk, maybe the same walk but earlier. And I was listening. I don't know. Maybe it was whatever. And I was listening to the song on it that began it, because I was at the start of the walk, and they said, let's see. Well, actually, let's look it up, because this is a really powerful line, and it actually like it really fucking it really like I felt like it was powerful. Like when they said this, I was like, oh my god. Okay. Astro Warrior Anthem, actually, which kind of makes sense because they might be like sort of astro, but like astral. They might be kind of saying like, yeah, this is the anthem if you actually want to be like spiritually sound. And here's the thing: I'm not saying that Dragon Force necessarily are spiritually sound, but what I am saying is that there are a lot of metal bands with a lot of occult and a lot of spiritual lyrics. Slaves of Fear by Amon Amarth and many other songs by them, including perhaps like the first song on Twilight of the Thunder God, many. Um, Much of Jom's Viking perhaps has, well, Jom's Viking is powerful. Anyway, yeah, Slaves of Fear by them, Blind Guardian, almost anything by Blind Guardian. They have the most spiritual lyrics maybe I've ever heard, actually. They have very good spiritual lyrics. I think Turn the Page to me is sort of like their modus operandi. It's like, uh come to the wheel, there's nothing to fear. Come to the pain, oh come turn the page. As in, come to the wheel, there's nothing to fear. Come to the wheel of your life. Take charge of your life. Do what you're gonna do. Do what you'd like to do. You could say do as thou wilt. And I imagine that Blind Guardian aren't the best guys, hence them like apparently like Hansi or one of them like called out a guy from like Demons and Wizards for being at the bullshit let's say the capital R event, the capital R, which is hilarious actually. Capital R, because it's CR for the terms of the event, the capital blank blank, but one word, two syllables. But it's like, but it's the capital R, as in 9, as in the number of Satan, right? The capital R. By the way, Washington D.C., Washington District of Columbia, or if you sound it out, it's Washington Dick. And if you go there, you can see the Washington Monument with the statue of Osiris as the Washington Monument. And what is it? The phallus of Osiris, actually. And as the story goes, his wife, or Isis. I'm not saying the group, the mythological figure or the Egyptian figure, whatever. She was putting back together Osiris, and all of his body parts had been scattered around the globe. And the last part that she needed was his penis, and she built it out of gold. And so that's the phallus of Osiris. That is what an obelisk is, essentially. And anytime you see an obelisk, let's just say I'm saying there might be a chance that it has to do with Osiris, actually, even though you see them a lot in America, including the Washington Monument, whatever. Anyway, okay, so hold on. Let's just get back to the stream for a second here. Oh. Actually, maybe we'll finish out a couple things. First of all, yeah, catechism, or at least I think I heard Father Simon says on Catholic radio, not saying they're not a cult or whatever, and like not giving you exoteric shit while having some esoteric ideas. But Father Simon says they do still give you some good advice, and I'd say their morality, if you actually follow it, their morality might be kind of fucking sound. And one of the big things, and Stefan Molyneux got this wrong. Yes, Stefan, you got it wrong. He was talking to a Catholic guy, and he said, "Well, doesn't Catholicism say that your girlfriend would essentially have to be forthcoming?" I think he might have used the word forthcoming, or like she would have to tell you whether she wanted to marry you or not. Like she'd be obligated to tell you that. It's like, nope, not at all. I'm not saying that they didn't have some kind of sinful relationship if they weren't getting married. I don't know if the guy he was talking to and this woman had ever had sex, and I think it's important to actually have a commitment before you have sex, because what are you doing? You're trying to have a child. Go to Epictetus. I think it's in the manual. He's like, yeah. I read the Sharon LaBelle translation, which is really good, even though she seems super libby and she has something about like dead white men or something, like literally that. I think those are the first 3 words of one of the little essays she has in the back, but she does a great translation, and I maybe she was doing it through gritted teeth, this part, but it says like, yeah, sex has a lot of gravity. Don't just fucking go into sex carelessly. And yeah, I would say the same thing. However, I would also say very firmly and very clearly, actually, that Stefan was wrong when he said that something along the lines of the woman would have been required by her Catholic faith to tell him. Now, you could take an angle that in terms of their relationship, Catholicism would have said like she essentially, marriage or nothing. And so kind of if she was leading this guy along in any way, then perhaps that was kind of her not fulfilling some kind of relationship duties. But in terms of duties to tell the truth, no, you don't have a duty to tell the truth. You have a duty not to lie. And in fact, not to bear false witness, which is a little broader than lying. It's lying, but it's also if you say like Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, if you say like, "Oh, I'm going to do something," it's like you don't know that you're going to do that. You